The stars above the planet Venner moved slowly, like glowing dust in the deep sky. On the tall tower of the royal palace, the air was cold and silent. Princess Lyra stood by the wide glass window, her hands folded in front of her, her eyes empty. Like a quiet sea, she had grown up in this palace. She had played in its halls, studied in its chambers, and dreamed of exploring the stars beyond her world. But now those dreams were gone. Today, she was no longer a princess. She was a price. Her father, Chief Arvin, was once a strong leader of the Venari people. But after a failed trade with the Tragan Empire, their planet fell into debt. The Tragan rulers were powerful and cold. They demanded repayment, not in gold or goods, but in a bond, a marriage between their heir and Arvin's only daughter. Chief Arvin had begged for another way, but the Tragan did not forgive or forget, and now, to protect the peace, Arvin agreed Lyra was to be married off. She did not cry. She did not speak. She only nodded when her father told her. She had always followed the rules. Her people needed this. She had no choice. But deep inside, something had changed. 2 guards waited. Outside her room, her bags were packed. The ship that would take her to the Tragan homeworld was ready in the skyport. She turned one last time and looked around her room. The books, the star maps, the old flute her mother gave her, all still there, but none of them mattered now. Lyra walked out of the room without looking back. The transport ship was small and quiet. The Tragan did not send an escort. They trusted fear to do the work. Inside the ship, Lyra sat alone. No windows, no view, only metal walls and silence. The ship moved through the stars for hours. Then something unexpected happened suddenly. Loud alarm rang through the walls. The ship shook hard. Lyra grabbed the seat. Lights turned red. A voice shouted over the speaker, but the words were lost in static. Then silence. For a few moments, everything stopped. Then came a different sound, the sound of heavy boots, doors opening, and voices speaking a language she did not know. The ship had been attacked. She did not panic. She knew what happened to transport ships sometimes: pirates, raiders, scavengers. If she was taken, maybe the Tragan would forget the deal. Maybe it would end here. But then, something strange happened again. A man entered the chamber. He wore a dark jacket and had strange symbols on his shoulder. He had short black hair and calm brown eyes. His face looked serious, but not cruel. He was human. He spoke in a soft voice, using a translator. "Are you hurt?" Lyra did not answer. She just stared at him. He was not what she expected. Not like the stories. Not wild or loud. He looked normal. "I'm Ray," he said. "You're safe now. We're from Earth Union Patrol. We picked up your signal." He waited for her to speak. She didn't. Then he stepped aside and called for someone. Another human came, a woman named Mira. She smiled gently and offered Lyra a drink. Lyra took it slowly. She was not used to kindness from strangers. They helped her stand. They led her through a hallway and into another ship, a human vessel. It was older, less shiny, but it felt alive. She saw a man fixing a panel, another reading a screen. They all looked up and nodded at her, but no one stared. Ray showed her to a small cabin, simple, clean, and warm. "You can rest here," he said. "No one will bother you." Lyra sat on the bed and looked at him. Her voice came out soft. "Why did you save me?" Ray paused, then said, "Because someone needed help." That night, Lyra could not sleep. She sat by the small round window in her room and looked at the stars. They looked the same as they did back home. But something inside her felt different. This was not the Tragan ship. These were not the people who wanted to use her for peace. These were strangers. But they treated her with care, with respect. She touched the glass and whispered to herself, "I was supposed to be traded, but I was found instead." And for the first time in a long while, her eyes showed more than silence. They showed a small light, a spark, the beginning. The ship was called Skyrunner. It was not big or shiny like royal ships, but it moved fast and felt alive. Every wall had marks of time, scratches, repairs, stickers. and small lights blinking like stars. Lyra walked slowly through the hallway. Her long silver dress brushed against the metal floor. She had never been on a human ship before. Everything felt strange. The air smelled different. The light was softer. The noise was full of soft hums, not silence. Ray walked beside her. He did not talk much. He simply pointed when they passed rooms. "That's the control room. That's the med bay. That's the food hall," he said quietly. Lyra nodded, still unsure if this was all real. She looked at the humans working around her. None of them laughed or stared. They just moved with purpose, fixing, checking, flying soon. They entered a room with a long table and simple chairs. There were 3 other humans sitting there. One was the woman named Mira, who had given her water earlier. The second was a tall man with a strong build, named Ben. The third was shorter, with soft eyes and a calm voice. His name was Joe. Ray said, "This is Lyra. She was the only passenger on that ship." Mira gave a small smile. "Welcome aboard, Lyra. You're safe here." Ben looked curious. Why would someone travel alone in a diplomatic ship? Ray shook his head. "We'll find out later. Right now, she needs rest." They all nodded. No one asked more questions. Lyra sat quietly. A warm drink was placed in front of her. It smelled sweet and soft. She took a small sip. Her hands were steady, but her heart was full of noise. She was not used to this peace, this space, this kindness. For a moment, she closed her eyes. Then Ray spoke. "You can stay here until we figure out where you need to go. The Skyrunner may not be a royal cruiser, but it's home." Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Ray leaned back in his chair. "You were in danger." "That's all we needed to know. No one helps for nothing," she said softly. Mira smiled gently. "We're not like the Tragan. We don't trade people." The word Tragan hit the air like a cold breeze. The room went quiet. Lyra looked down. She didn't want to talk about it. Ray noticed. He stood up and nodded to the others. "We'll let you rest later." Lyra was taken to a sleeping chamber. It had a small bed, a window showing stars, and a desk with a light. She sat on the bed and stared out. The stars looked close, like she could reach them. That night, for the first time in many days, she slept. The next morning, Ray knocked on her door. "We need your help," he said. Lyra stood up quickly. "My help? There's a route ahead with asteroid movement. We're trying to find a safe path." "You studied star maps, right?" Lyra nodded slowly. He handed her a tablet. "Take a look." She followed him to the control room. Mira and Joe were already working on the charts. Ben was flying the ship, hands moving quickly across the control board. Lyra studied the map. The stars and pops were familiar. Her teachers had trained her well. She pointed to a line. "Go between these 2 fields," she said. "There's a small gap here. It's hidden, but it's stable." Ray looked at the screen, then at her. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Ben smiled. "Let's do it." As the Skyrunner moved forward, Lyra watched the stars shift outside the window. The ship tilted and turned, flying smoothly through the dark field. Sharp rocks floated past like silent sharks, but they stayed clear of the ship. Mira clapped her hands. "We made it." Ray looked at Lyra. "Thanks to her." Lyra felt something she had not felt in a long time. Useful. Later, Ray and Lyra stood on the observation deck. The stars glowed softly beyond the glass. "Where were you going?" Ray asked. Lyra stayed quiet for a moment. "To the Tragan homeworld," she finally said. "To be married." Ray's eyes narrowed. "By choice, no." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to go back." "My people need peace," she replied. The marriage was part of a deal. Ray was silent. Then he said, "Peace should not cost your freedom." Lyra looked at him. His voice was calm, but his words were strong. She had never met anyone who spoke like that. Not her teachers, not her father, not even the stars she used to wish upon. He reached into his pocket and handed her something small, a silver ring. Simple, round, with a tiny star carved on top. "This is a navigator's ring," he said. "Every crew member has one." "I'm not part of your crew," she said softly. "You helped us today." You chose your path. That matters. She held the ring in her hand. It was warm from his touch. That night, she sat by the window again. The ring lay in her hand. She looked at her reflection in the glass. Her eyes looked different. Not dull. Not tired. They were thinking. The Skyrunner continued its journey through the galaxy. Days passed quietly, but inside the ship, something had started to change. Lyra no longer stayed in her room all day. She now joined the crew for meals, walked through the halls, and sometimes sat in the control room beside Ben and Joe. She asked questions. She listened. She watched the way they worked as a team. She was still quiet, but not silent anymore. Ray noticed this change. He often saw her standing near the big front window, eyes following the stars. She still wore her long silver dress, but she had also accepted a light jacket from Mira. It made her look like part of the crew. One morning, the comm was broken. A warning light blinked red on the control panel. Joe leaned forward, scanning the screen. "There's trouble," he said. Ray stepped closer. "What kind?" Joe pointed at the screen. "Two ships ahead. One from the Tragan side, the other from the Varnic pirates, fighting near a fuel station. We'll pass close if we stay on this path." Ray narrowed his eyes. "Can we avoid them?" "Only if we take a detour through the Cravon Belt," Ben said. "But that's a dangerous zone. Too many rocks, no clear charts." The room fell. Silent, everyone looked at the screen, then at Ray. Before he could speak, Lyra stepped forward. "I know that belt," she said. "We studied it in navigation school. There's an old path used by Venari scouts. It's not on most maps now, but I remember the pattern." Ray looked at her. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "It's risky, but better than facing the Tragan and pirates at once." Ray turned to the crew. "All right, let's trust her. Lyra, take the co-pilot seat. Guide us in." Joe moved aside. Lyra sat down, her hands shaking just a little. She looked at the screen, then closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered the chart from her lessons. The line of drifting rocks, the safe curve between two small moons. She opened her eyes and pointed. "Start here," she said. "Then curve left after the second large rock." Ben nodded and steered the ship. The Skyrunner moved forward, the screen showing rocks floating all around them. One wrong move, and the ship would be crushed. Everyone stayed quiet. The tension was heavy. "Now," Lyra said, "down 5 degrees. Then turn right." The ship turned sharply. A large piece of rock floated past, missing the wing by only a few meters. "Good call," Joe whispered. Lyra's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Her voice remained steady. "Keep going. We're almost there." The ship passed through the last part of the belt. The rocks thinned out. The stars opened ahead like a quiet sea. "We're clear," Ben said with relief. The crew clapped softly. Mira smiled and gave Lyra a thumbs dash up. Ray looked at her with respect. "Well done." Lyra turned to him. For the first time, she smiled. Later, in the dining area, the crew sat together. There was laughter and warm food. Lyra sat with them, not apart. She listened to their stories, even shared one of her own, a small tale from her childhood, chasing stars in the palace garden. Ben laughed. "So you weren't always this serious?" Lyra shook her head, smiling again. "I used to dream a lot." Ray leaned forward. "And now?" She looked down at her drink. "Now I don't know what to dream." He didn't push. He just nodded. That evening, Ray found her again near the observation deck. She stood looking out at the stars. "As always, you were brave today," he said. Lyra turned slightly. "I just did what I was taught." "No," he said. "You did more than that. You chose to lead. You saved us from a fight." Lyra was quiet. Then she asked, "Do humans always listen like this? To people who are not part of their crew?" Ray smiled a little. "Good captains do." She looked at him. "Are you a good captain?" "I try to be." They both smiled. Ray handed her something, a folded paper star. "What is this?" she asked. "It's something we do on Earth," he explained. "A way to mark a good day. We make a star to remember it." Lyra held it in her hands. It was small and simple, but it felt important. "Thank you," she said softly. Ray stepped back. Rest well, Lyra. She nodded and stayed by the window as he left. Her fingers touched the paper star. Her eyes reflected the light from the stars outside. She thought about the path through the belt, the trust given to her, the way her voice had mattered. In that quiet moment, Lyra realized something. She didn't feel like a prisoner anymore. She felt like herself, and her eyes, once empty and dull, now held something new. Hope. The Skyrunner flew smoothly through space. Inside the ship, things were calm, but not quiet. Something had changed. Lyra was no longer just a guest. She was part of the crew now. The others treated her like family. She helped in the control room. She ate with the team. She even shared stories from her world with Joe and Mira during long travel hours. Her voice had become stronger. Her eyes had become brighter. Ray noticed this. Every time he saw her laugh, he saw a new version of Lyra. Not the quiet princess who had stepped onto their ship, but a girl full of thoughts, questions, and strength. But that peace didn't last long. One day, while Mira and Lyra were checking the ship's food supplies, Ray called the crew to the main deck. His voice sounded serious. Everyone gathered quickly. A message was playing on the large screen. It was from the Tragan Empire. The message was short and direct. We know you have the Venari princess. You will return her to us. She belongs to Tragan now. Any delay will be taken as disrespect to our empire. The message ended. The room fell silent. Joe looked at Ray. They tracked us. Ben clenched his jaw. What do we do now? Lyra stepped forward. They are right. I was meant to go to them. Ray turned to her. Do you want to go? Lyra looked at the floor. Her voice was low. It's not about what I want. My father made a deal. If I don't return, there may be war. I cannot let that happen. Mira shook her head. They're treating you like a tool, not a person. Lyra replied softly, I know. Ray took a deep breath. We can protect you. We don't answer to Tragan. Lyra looked at him. But my people will suffer if I don't go. That's not something I can ignore. Ray said nothing. The others stayed quiet too. Later, Lyra sat alone in her room. She stared at the small ring Ray had given her, the navigator's ring. It still felt warm in her hand. Her mind was full of noise. Her heart was heavy. She had started to feel free. On this ship, she had started to feel real. But now the past had returned. The duty, the promise, the deal. Ray knocked on her door. Can I come in? He asked. She nodded. He stepped in and sat across from her. I won't stop you, he said. If you believe this is right, we'll take you there. I don't know what's right, she replied. But I do know my people are scared. They need peace. Ray looked at her. And what do you need? Lyra's eyes filled with emotion, but she didn't cry. I need to do the thing that keeps others safe, she said. Ray nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket and handed her a small box. What's this? She asked. He opened it. Inside was a tiny badge, a symbol of the Skyrunner crew. A star with wings. You earned this. He said, no matter where you go, you are one of us. Lyra touched the badge gently. Thank you. Ray stood up. We'll take you to Tragan space. But if you ever change your mind, just say one word. We'll turn around. She nodded. The next day, the Skyrunner changed course. The stars outside began to shift. The ship was moving toward the Tragan Empire. As they traveled, the crew became quieter. No one wanted Lyra to go, but no one stopped her either. They respected her choice. On the last night before arrival, the crew held a small gathering. Mira made warm drinks. Joe played soft music from Earth. Ben told a funny story to lighten the mood. Lyra sat in the middle of them, smiling. She listened closely, as if trying to remember everything. Ray sat beside her. You've changed since we met. Lyra looked at him. You helped me find my voice. He shook his head. You already had it. You just needed a place to use it. She smiled, then looked away. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? I think, he said gently. You're doing a brave thing. Right or wrong comes after. Lyra didn't answer, but her eyes said enough. The next morning, the Tragan ship came into view. It was large, dark, and sharp like a blade, cold, powerful, and silent. Lyra stood in the hallway, ready to board. Mira hugged her tightly. Stay strong. Ben nodded. We'll be nearby, just in case. Joe gave a soft smile. You always have a place with us. Ray walked her to the airlock. They stood there for a moment, facing each other. I don't know what will happen next, Lyra said. Neither do I, Ray replied. But remember this, you're not alone anymore. Lyra stepped onto the boarding platform. She turned one. Last time her eyes met Ray's. They didn't speak, but something passed between them, a silent promise. A quiet strength. And then the doors closed. The halls of the Dragon Palace were cold and silent. Every wall was smooth, gray, and perfect. There were no decorations, no signs of life, just sharp corners and metal floors. Lyra walked down the center of the hallway, guarded by 2 soldiers. Her silver dress flowed behind her, and her hands were tied in front, not with ropes, but with duty. No one had spoken to her since she left the Skyrunner. The dragon ship had taken her without kindness. She was not greeted. She was not asked. If she was well, she was simply taken. Inside her heart, she felt like a stone. She had chosen this path, but it did not feel like peace. It felt like walking through shadows. Soon, she was led into a large hall filled with people. The Dragon Council stood at the front. Their leader, High Lord Varnick, sat on a raised seat, his face calm but cold. He wore black robes and a metal crown that caught the light. Beside him stood his son, Tharn, tall, proud, and silent. His eyes did not look at Lyra with kindness. They looked at her like she was something owned. The hall was full of quiet watchers. Dragon nobles, soldiers, advisors, everyone waited. Lyra stood at the center, alone. High Lord Varnick spoke first. The Venari girl has returned. He said it without emotion. No name. No welcome. One of the nobles stepped forward. The wedding will begin in 3 hours. Lyra raised her voice. I would like to speak. There was silence. A few nobles looked surprised. One even laughed softly. High Lord Varnick raised his hand. You may speak. For 1 minute. Lyra stood tall. Her voice was steady. I came here because of a deal between your empire and my father. I did not run. I did not hide. I faced what was placed before me. She paused, then continued. But I am not a thing to be traded. I am not a promise made by others. I am a person, and I now choose to speak for myself. A murmur spread across the hall. No one had expected this. I gave my word to return, she said. I have done that, but I will not be silent anymore. Tharn stepped forward, his voice sharp. You were brought here to honor the alliance, not to speak of your feelings. Lyra looked him in the eye. Then you do not understand peace. True peace does not come from silence. It comes from choice. More whispers filled the room. Some looked shocked, others curious. At that moment, a large screen on the wall lit up. A message had arrived. Ray's face appeared. This is Ray of the Earth ship Skyrunner, he said. Lyra is not alone. Her voice matters. Her life matters. We are watching. The screen went black. There was complete silence in the hall. Then someone in the back, a dragon guard, stepped forward and bowed slightly. She speaks truth, he said. This is not honor. This is control. More murmurs followed. A few other guards nodded. Varnick stood from his seat. His voice was firm. This marriage was promised. It will go forward. Lyra looked around. She saw the people. Some looked uncertain. Some looked angry. But none of them looked proud. She said, You can force a ceremony, but you cannot make it true. I will stand there, but I will not give my heart. High Lord Varnick's eyes narrowed. Then we will break the alliance. Lyra held her chin high. Then let it break, outside the palace. Word had spread. The message from Ray had reached not just the palace, but the people of Dragon. Across cities, screens showed Lyra's speech. Her voice had been heard by more than nobles. Citizens began to speak. Some asked questions. Others protested quietly. In the outer districts, a small group of Dragon citizens stood holding signs. Choice is strength. We are not rulers of silence. Inside the palace, guards began to lower their weapons. Varnick saw the change. He turned to his son. This will not end the way we plan. Thorn clenched his fists, but he said nothing. A door opened. A new group entered. It was the crew of the Skyrunner. Mira, Ben, Joe, and Ray stepped in together. No weapons, no fear. Ray spoke, calm and clear. You cannot stop the truth. It is already moving. Lyra turned and saw them. Her face did not show surprise, only quiet relief. Ray looked at her and nodded once. High Lord Varnick gave one last order. Remove them. But the guards didn't move. One of them said, "We are not here to fight our own people." The hall began to shift. Power was slipping from the rulers. Words had done what weapons could not. Lyra stepped forward. "I'm leaving," she said. No. One stopped her. She walked across the hall, past the guards, past the nobles, past Tharn and Varnick. Her steps were light. Her back was straight. At the doors, she turned one last time. To all who listened, she said, "Thank you. Let this be a start." Then she walked through the open doors. Outside, the sky was clear. The Skyrunner waited. Nearby, ready to take off. Ray stood at the base of the ramp. He didn't speak. He simply reached out his hand. Lyra took it. She was not running anymore. She was returning to the place where she had found her voice, and her eyes, once full of silence, now held something new. Courage. The Skyrunner flew through open space once again. Inside the ship, everything felt brighter. The crew was back together, and Lyra, she was free. But this time, she was not the same person who had once stared silently at the stars. Now, her eyes held strength. Her voice was clear. Her steps were sure. In the control room, the crew watched reports coming in from across the galaxy. Something had begun. The message from Lyra had reached many places, planets under the rule of the Tragan Empire. We're starting to speak out. People were asking questions. Some leaders were meeting in secret. Even a few Tragan citizens had joined in peaceful marches. Joe turned from the screen. "This is bigger than we thought." Ray nodded. Lyra's words did more than we imagined. Lyra stood nearby, listening. She didn't look proud. She looked thoughtful. Mira placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You didn't just walk away. You stood up. That matters." Lyra looked at her. "But what happens now? Tragan won't stay silent for long." Ben leaned back in his seat. "They already sent a warning. They called Earth Union leaders. Accused us of stealing a royal bride." Ray crossed his arms. "But they can't hide the truth." The whole galaxy saw her speak. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Lyra spoke. "I think I need to go further." Ray turned to her. "What do you mean?" "I want to speak again," she said. "Not just once, not just on one planet. I want to travel, talk to more people, help them understand what real peace means." Ray looked at her with quiet respect. "Then we'll take you." Over the next few days, the Skyrunner visited different planets, Venari colonies, neutral worlds, small stations full of travelers and traders. Everywhere they went, Lyra spoke, sometimes to big crowds, sometimes just to a few people in a room. She did not shout. She did not blame. She simply told her story. She spoke of the deal made without her voice, of the quiet prison of duty, of the courage to say no, of finding strength not in power, but in truth. People listened. Some cried. Some clapped. Some left in silence, thinking deeply. News spread quickly. Her name became known, not as a princess, not as a bride, but as a voice, a symbol. One night, while they rested on a peaceful moon station, a message came through. It was from a group of young Tragan citizens. They wanted to meet Lyra. "They say they don't agree with their empire's ways," Joe said, reading the message. "They've seen the recordings. They want to stand for change." Lyra agreed to meet them. The next day, she walked into a quiet room on the station. Inside were 5 Tragan youths. None of them looked dangerous. They looked tired, but hopeful. One of them, a girl named Riven, stepped forward. "I saw your face when you stood in the hall. You were not afraid." "I was afraid," Lyra said, "but I didn't let it stop me." Riven nodded. "We want to learn how to do that too." They talked for a long time, about power, about choice, about unity. Later, When the group left, Lyra stood in the hallway, thinking. Ray walked up beside her. "You did it again," he said. "No," she replied. "They did it. I just gave them a reason to believe." Ray looked at her. "Do you ever think of going back to Venner?" Lyra smiled softly. "Maybe someday, when they are ready to hear what I have to say." But not everyone was happy. Dragon leaders had grown angry. They sent warnings across the galaxy. Ships were placed at borders. Some planets were threatened. A small station that had hosted Lyra's speech was attacked. No one was hurt. But the message was clear. Ray called a crew meeting. "We need to be careful. They're trying to stop her voice." Ben said. "They're too late. People are already rising." Mira looked at Lyra. "Do you want to stop?" Lyra shook her head. "No. If I stop now, they win, and others will lose their chance to speak." Ray looked at her, proud. "Then we keep going." The Skyrunner changed its path. It now moved toward Freepoint, a large neutral station known for its gatherings of different species and leaders. A peace summit was taking place there. Lyra had been invited to speak. As they neared the station, tension grew. Ships circled the outer ring. Soldiers checked every rival. The Dragon had sent observers inside the Skyrunner. Lyra prepared her speech. She stood in front of a mirror, holding the navigator's ring in her hand. Ray watched her from the doorway. "You don't need to be perfect," he said. "Just be yourself." Lyra nodded. "I'm ready." At the summit hall, lights were bright and the air was still. Many important voices had spoken already. Leaders, scholars, peacekeepers. Then it was Lyra's turn. She walked slowly to the center stage. No crown, no royal dress, just a simple jacket and her ring. She stood tall and looked at the faces in front of her. "I was once told I had no choice," she began. "That duty was more important than dreams. That silence was better than truth." She looked at the crowd. "But I learned something. When we stop listening to voices, we lose more than freedom. We lose hope." She told them her story again. But this time, it reached deeper. It echoed in the silence. It touched hearts. She ended with this. "I do not want to rule. I do not want power. I only want a world where no one is married to duty, chained by fear, or silenced by others. I want a world where everyone can stand and say, 'I choose.'" The hall was quiet. Then it exploded in applause. Far away in the Dragon Palace, the High Lord watched the speech on a screen. He said nothing, but behind him, one of his own advisors turned and walked away. Change had begun, and it could not be stopped. The stars outside the Skyrunner glowed softly as the ship moved through open space. Inside, everything was calm. There was no emergency, no mission, no fear. Just quiet work, soft voices, and the sound of the ship humming like a heartbeat. Lyra sat near the observation window, holding a pen in her hand. She was writing in a small paper journal. It had been a gift from Mira, something simple, but special. Her words flowed like water. Today was different from all the other days before. She was no longer a passenger. She was no longer a girl waiting for her future to be chosen by others. She was part of the crew now. Her name was on the ship's roster. Her duties were real. She helped with navigation, handled signals from other ships, and even trained with Joe in basic defense. She worked hard, and no one treated her like a princess. She liked that. Ray entered the room and smiled when he saw her. "Writing again?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "Just thoughts. I don't want to forget any of this." Ray sat across from her. "No one's going to forget. Not after what you did. I didn't do it alone," she said. "But you started it," Ray replied. "You gave others the courage to speak." She looked out at the stars. "It still feels strange how something so small, just one voice, can change so much." Ray leaned back in his seat. "That's how change always begins, with someone brave enough to speak first." The next stop for the Skyrunner was a small planet called Dovia, where young leaders from different planets had gathered. They had invited Lyra to join their forum. The ship landed on a quiet green field. The air was warm. The sky was soft blue with twin suns glowing above. Lyra stepped out with the crew beside her. People clapped when they saw her. Some even cheered. One young girl ran forward and handed Lyra a folded paper star. "You helped my mother," the girl said. She was afraid to speak. "But after she saw you, she said her voice matters too." Lyra bent down and hugged the girl. She didn't say much, just smiled and held the paper star tightly inside the forum hall. Lyra spoke once again. But this time, she didn't stand alone. Next to her stood Mira, who spoke of kindness and strength. Joe talked about standing together even when afraid. Ben shared how even a quiet act could protect many. And Ray, he spoke last. He said, "A voice can be silenced, but 100 voices cannot. And when one voice turns into many, even the strongest." Walls fall. The room filled with applause. Lyra looked at her team and felt something warm inside her chest. This was not just a crew anymore. It was a family. Weeks passed. More people reached out to them. More planets invited them. Messages poured in from across the galaxy, from teachers, workers, soldiers, and students. All wanted to hear more, learn more, and do more. Lyra became a guide, not just a symbol. She trained others on peaceful talks. She helped write new agreements between smaller planets. She even started a group called the Choice Circle, where people from different worlds could come together and speak freely, no matter their rank or role. But even as her work grew, she never changed. She still cleaned the control room with Ben. She still laughed with Joe during night shifts. She still helped Mira prepare warm meals. And she still walked with Ray during quiet hours. One evening, while watching the stars, she asked him, "Do you think this will last?" Ray looked at her. "Change is slow, but it's moving. That's enough." She nodded. "I used to dream about stars, but now I dream about people." Ray smiled. "That's a better dream." One day, a message came from her home planet. VNA It was from her father, Chief Arvin. The message was short, but full of emotion. "I see now. I was wrong to give you away. I thought peace could only come through silence. But you showed me it can come from truth. I am proud of you." Lyra closed her eyes as she heard the words. They were not just an apology. They were a beginning. She wrote back, "Thank you, Father. I am still your daughter. But now, I am also something more." Sometime later, as the Skyrunner flew near a quiet planet, Lyra stood at the bridge. She looked at the stars ahead. Ray came beside her. "We don't have a set path this week. We can go anywhere. You choose." Lyra smiled. "Let's go where people still feel afraid to speak." Ray nodded. "Then that's where we'll go." She pressed a button on the screen. The ship turned slightly and began its new course. As the stars shifted, Lyra stood tall, her ring shining. Softly under the lights, she had been married off to repay a debt. But she had found something far greater. She found her voice. She found her freedom. And she found her path. Not given, not forced, chosen.